Some paths don't reveal themselves all at once. They unfold over time, shaped by curiosity, detours, and a refusal to narrow the questions too early. Welcome to the Marquis Masters podcast. I'm Nick Franck. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Marie Bahr, a retired professor emerita of religious studies who spent 3 decades teaching at South Dakota State University. Dr. Bahr's academic journey is anything but linear, beginning in geology, moving through geophysics, and ultimately landing in religious studies because, as she explains, it offered a way to study history, culture, philosophy, and what it means to be human all at once. In this episode, we talk about how that winding path shaped her career, why she's advocating for a revitalized and more accessible model of liberal arts education, and how she's continuing her work through writing, public dialogue, and community engagement. Let's get into it. I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Marie Bahr today. Dr. Bahr, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, okay. So a lot to get to today, a lot of diving into education with you. You spent 30 years as an educator. Tell us a little bit about, what got you into education? What was the passion behind following that path?
Well, actually, I had a lot of abilities, and they're straight across the board high. So there was nothing coming out of high school that led me in one direction or another, and I did follow a very winding path. I loved everything that I took, every course that I took. And so I graduated undergraduate in geology and headed off to the California Institute of Technology and looking to go into geophysics, and very quickly decided I couldn't narrow my interest that much to that one thing. And took some time off to explore, and finally ended up in religious studies because, well, religion covers everything. You can do history there, you can do different cultures there, you can participate in global studies programs. You get to look at the different philosophies that people have and how they think about the world and what it means to be human, all of those things. So I decided that was it. Started at Stanford for 2 years, got my MA there. They didn't have anything in, I was very interested in the Indian subcontinent and the religions there at the time, and Stanford focused farther east, in East Asia. So I ended up at Temple University, loved it, the religion department there, had somebody from every religion, and they were predominantly from that part of the world. So you got to, up front, interact with people from the culture. So that was great. Then when I finished my master's, which was actually, my dissertation was in the Gospel of John, so I did a little bit of biblical studies too, in addition to doing a lot of world religions and interfaith dialogue and all that type of stuff. It was a broad-ranging program, and I needed that because I couldn't focus on just one thing. And immediately landed the job at South Dakota State University. I like rural, I like small town. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, and I thought, oh, this sounds good. So I came in and stayed. Yeah. Graduated.
Wow. We talked about.
I finished my career, there. And I didn't have any relatives there. So it was either go back to Wisconsin or I had a brother in Vermont. And I do like Vermont. So I'm in Vermont now.
Yeah. Well, the weather is, I don't want to say it's nicer or better, but it's probably less harsh. We were kind of chatting about this before, but I also, I grew up in the North Dakota area and am very familiar with the Dakotas. And so to be able to stick it there for that long is more power to being able to be in South Dakota for as long as you were.
Well, I did get used to it, but yes, I can recall when I first got there, I thought, people actually live here? It's the hottest and the coldest place. And if it's 30 below and the wind is blowing 30 miles an hour, oh my gosh, I can hardly take the dog out for a walk.
When you think about, your experience and, you said, hey, I wanted to do so many different things. And so the religious studies kind of allowed you to be able to do that, to be able to focus and study on so many different things. How do you think that experience kind of and that career progression got to you to where you are today?
Well, it certainly gave me a place in which I could both be just academic and learn new things, which I enjoyed, and teach. And I enjoyed, working with the undergraduate students were just wonderful to work with. South Dakota is a very nice place in that regard. The students are polite, they're friendly, they're interested. Like myself, a lot of them were first generation college students. So that was great. But it also, right now, I'm really interested in trying to do what I can to interact with other people who are concerned about real world problems and how to fix them. So it's the kind of applied part of this. And you have to be careful about that when you're working for somebody else, But now I'm independent. And if I say anything that somebody takes offense at, it's just me that they'll get upset with. So I really want to get, I see so many things happening in the world, and I say, oh, if people only knew what I knew, I think we could fix this. Yeah. And so that's what I want to do. I want to try to find some people who are interested in playing a public role. And in religious studies, that's particularly difficult because what do you do with religious studies in a society like ours? We don't want to, let religion dominate the public space. That wouldn't be appropriate in a diverse society like we live in. But it has a lot of insights into human history and human beings, and it does have some contributions to make to things that we're struggling with. So, for example, right now as we're recording this, there's a lot of a ruckus up in Minneapolis, which both you and I were close to for a long time. Questions about immigration and how to handle that situation. And there are people using the Bible on both sides of the debate. So what I did is I wrote a long article about immigration in the Bible, just from an academic point of view first, and I'm going to put it now today on my LinkedIn site. That is not the answer. Just the academic response is not the answer. But hopefully I can get some people to talk about this. What is the answer? How do we use this knowledge in a way that's both accurate, and helpful to helping to solve this problem?
Have you ever wondered how some people's stories live on, not just through their work, but through history itself? For nearly 130 years, Marquis Who's Who has been documenting the lives of leaders, innovators, and changemakers across every profession. From CEOs and scientists to artists and educators, Marquis has captured the stories behind success, the people who define our times. Being listed in Marquis Who's Who isn't just recognition, it's taking control of your personal brand and using it to create a meaningful and impactful legacy. It's a record of your life's work, preserved, published, and accessible to generations who will study, research, and be inspired by your contribution. If you've built something meaningful and you've made an impact in your field or community, this is how you ensure your story is told and your personal brand is maintained accurately with integrity. Visit MarquisWho'sWho.com to learn more about how you or someone you admire can be featured, because history remembers those who take the time to record it.
And can you talk a little bit more about kind of your continued plan to do this, to advocate for, using your liberal arts education to kind of, as you said, try to find a way to educate individuals a little bit better about, things that are going on?
The public. And it's really difficult right now. I mean, I'm calling myself a public intellectual. And what we need to do is give the public an ability some of the opportunities I've had to learn about different things, because this will prepare them to do what I want to do for themselves. It'll give them some agency. They'll be allowed to, better handle these programs without somebody else saying, you really should do this, or you really should do that. So in general, and this goes way, not just religious studies, but this goes all the way back to my love of liberal arts, the more you can learn, the more you can control your life, the more you can help other people, the more you can see solutions. And I do think this needs to be lifelong, because my own liberal arts degree is so far in the past. I would really need a refresher course at least. And so I do think we really need to think how we deliver liberal arts, but it's under attack now. It's disappearing. General studies programs and that are disappearing from most universities, which are focusing more on things you can do for a career, take care of the economic side of your life, which is important. But so is the civic side of your life. So is the personal side of your life, And your education should provide you those opportunities. It will make you a much more content, happier, successful person, in those areas. And the world needs you. I mean, we really need involved citizens, and involved citizens need to be educated. Otherwise, they'll just yell at each other, and we'd get nowhere.
Yeah. You kind of touched on, your liberal arts, degree and needing a refresher. And, mine is now 10 plus years old, and maybe I need a refresher. Like, do you feel like there's a new format, a new way, like a different way that we should be delivering education?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it needs to be lifelong, available lifelong. It needs to be inexpensive or maybe free, because if there's any part of your higher education that is not just for your good, is for the good of other people and the country, it's that. So maybe since this is a public good, maybe the public should pay. But certainly it needs to be inexpensive. It needs to have a local component, because I really think the discussions you have in liberal arts courses about things that you're doing and reading and about what's happening is important, because you don't need a teacher in that classroom to tell you what to think. You need a teacher in that classroom to show you how to engage with other people on hot button topics, and to get somewhere, not to just fizzle out in frustration because you can't get to each other and explain. Yeah, so we need those tools. We do need it locally. We do need it inexpensive. We do need it lifelong. I made a small effort to start that right here, where I'm living in Vermont right now. I checked before I moved out here. They have still a state college, but it was it had gotten a reward from one of the best small public liberal arts colleges in the country. I thought, okay, that's where I want to go. And I wasn't here very long, and the program just got smashed. People did not understand the importance of having that, and it went the way of so many other colleges. So yes, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of advocacy work to be done. We're up against, of course, the financial difficulties in public education in general right now. So there is a lot to be done, but I'm free. I can help. Yeah. And, I can't forecast what the outcome will be, but I just know that I want to spend some time trying to convince people by putting things on things like LinkedIn, hopefully getting a little podcast going myself where I can talk to people who are interested in this and see what can be done. I do have some higher ed connections, so maybe I can use those. I'm just looking for ways that I can make a difference.
Sure. If there was a civics class or a class that you would wish that every citizen would have to take or would take today, like what would it be? What do you think would be one of the most valuable things for just, today, if we can make it work, if the financials were not a challenge, like something that you think everyone should have to go through?
Yes, and people do say, I hear people saying, everybody should have civics. We see the mess we're in. Everybody should have a civics class. Yes, everybody should, but not just one that tells you how government should work, ideally. One that really dives into why we're having difficulties right now. And part of that is we're putting too many decisions in the hands of too few people who have too narrow a training. So that's the importance of getting people that broader training so that they can better guide the nation if they're in Washington, D.C., or they can better guide the state, if they're in the State House. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, and so, you're retired from active teaching, but you're not done teaching, right? Like you're still trying to do that. So like talk a little bit about, you're also a writer, you write. So like talk about your experience like writing now. What has that transition been like from, standing in front of a class or teaching like that to trying to teach in a different format, right? Writing or a podcast. Talk about that.
Yes. Well, what I've done so far had to do with jumping into the liberal arts question and whether we need it for democracy. I just used the local newspaper for that because I thought I could actually do something locally. Now I am struggling to, I put together this essay, which is about 3,000 words long, about all that the Bible says about immigration, about resident aliens. Of course, you may or may not know, but there's currently a exchange going on between Pope Leo the 14th and Mike Johnson, and I could act as a mediator, I guess, but instead of the public just picking who they want to follow, I am trying to see what's actually there, using my background, as a scholar, lay it out there. And so now I've got this nice essay. What do I do with it? That's a question. I'm going to definitely do it LinkedIn. I went to my local church and said, here, can you suggest, where people might want to look at this? I can be interviewed for questions about, the debate if it continues. And that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're also doing more than that. You're also kind of scoping out on some of the harder things and maybe adding a little bit more physical hardness in your life. I understand you're working on a farm, you're raising goats. Like what is that experience like? I grew up in a farming community. I'm very familiar with it. Is that something that you always wanted to do? Is that something that's been something that was a passion project? You're like, now I want to invest in this. Like, what is that like?
No. Okay, so I did have a farm in South Dakota, small farm with the goats and all. In Vermont, I don't have goats anymore. I just have vegetables and I actually cooperate with a dairy farmer nearby, but I don't have my own goats. The reason for how that connects to the rest of my life is I've always had an interest in ecological things, environmental things, and the broader scale question of how ought we to live, the ethical question. How ought we to live on this planet? How ought we to live together? And that's how that fits into that, experimenting with local, having a small local business on the farm. I am not an economist by any means. I wish I knew more about how economies work. But just doing the practical experimentation of how we could live differently. I mean, I really think young people today have so much trouble finding a job that will endure, that they don't have to be pushed by who they work for here, there, and everywhere and uproot their family. I honestly think and I did this for myself when I was in South Dakota because I wasn't sure my job would last as long as it did. So I made myself self-sufficient. And I think if we had a program like a new land grant program, where people could be given a big enough plot of land to take care of themselves, and they could then have the option of moving when they wanted to, or if their job disappeared, they could live, and they and their family could live on that land, off that land, what they were able to do with it until they found something else, something that they really wanted. They wouldn't just feel, again, that lack of agency we feel when we're just at the behest of a big corporation or somebody else who seems to run your life. I mean, this is your life. Your values should be important here. So, and that's how that fits. Now, I don't have the goats anymore, but and I think probably, I hate to say it, I love rural, but I think to do what I want to do, I may have to move back to where there is a big university of some sort, which means a bigger city.
Sure. Well, and Anne-Marie, you're clearly very engaged with, whether it's through, the writing that you're doing, whether it's through your kind of community push for, like working with local vendors, with your farm and your writing and your church. Like, how important is that to you to give back to your community and make it feel like you're making the place that you live better for the future?
Oh, it is. It's very important, and actually, the world. I mean, if you have enough education, you've gotten some viewpoints on the whole world and on the nation and locally, and they're all important. I mean, I think we all need to be locally involved, but we all need to be globally connected. We need to understand the whole world because there's no little place that just operates without influence from everything else. We are connected.
Yeah, right. It's amazing. Like, I think, when people are involved, like you're trying to, leave the world a better place than when we came into it. Right. And I think, as I kind of transition to kind of the next area that I want to just kind of ask you a couple, kind of like more lighthearted kinds of questions. And when you think about your career and what you've done, and if you could meet somebody and have a conversation, right, you can have lunch with someone to either talk about these issues with, or like talk about your passions, or, whether they're alive, whether they're no longer with us, like, who would you have lunch with?
I would love to have lunch with some unnamed traveler on the Silk Roads from, probably a couple centuries prior to the Common Era, because that was the first global time. And I am amazed that everybody talks about the merchandise, the trade that traveled, but ideas traveled, religions traveled. How did these people manage to come into a town where they didn't know the language, they didn't know the culture, and feel welcomed and actually work with people from a very different place and culture to actually translate all these manuscripts and things that they did? That must have been a whole different world than we live in. And somehow they managed to make it work together for a millennia or more. Wow, I'd like to know how they did that.
I mean, I do too. I think about it now, where we're also in an era where we can go to any country that, if we don't speak the language, we have translators on our phone, and we can have conversations with individuals in other countries that don't speak the same languages. And, maybe there's a little delay in the conversation, but you can communicate. And at that time, obviously that would not have been possible.
No, I mean, not just the physical dangers, but robbers and bandits. How did you know who to trust and who not to trust?
Right. That's such a great answer. Such a unique, like, thinking about that. You had mentioned when you went to college, you went for something different than what you ended up doing. And when you were growing up, you had a lot of minds of, oh, should I do this? Should I do this? Was there another path that you think you would have potentially chosen? Like, or do you think, like, okay, what I picked was exactly what I could have done and should have done? But like, if you went back to your 16-year-old self, do you think looking back, you would have kind of picked the same thing?
No, because my 16-year-old self, of course, I was growing up in a very low middle income, maybe almost poverty level home. Nobody thought back then that a woman should go to college. let alone go into something that had no obvious career path at that time. I was Catholic. I mean, I couldn't work for the church very well. I'd be a leader in the church as a Catholic. So what was I going to do with this? So no, I mean, what I knew when I was 16 was that I was unusually gifted intellectually, And I knew from going to the Superior Students Lab in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin-Madison, that they couldn't help me, basically, because my interests and my abilities were this flat level. Nothing stood out. Everything. I wanted to do everything. So that's where I was at 16, knowing that, I did get a lot of support from grants and things. I knew that people were willing to invest in me, but I really didn't know where I was going in it. And as I was progressing from one place to the other, I felt like a failure, of course. I mean, I really have to have something that shows people that I'm a leader in this, that, or the other thing. And I never did get that. And it's actually not until Marquis Who's Who asked me about my life, to go back and reflect on my life. And I started to put it together, and I thought, oh, I did get something out of this that's going to be useful and helpful, and I can do something with this. It was all by mistake. I didn't have it planned. I just followed my heart. But yeah, it does work together now. I can use that to do what I want to do now for the last stage of my life. Probably the last stage, who knows?
Do you think, looking back, like, that's one of the biggest lessons that you learned throughout life is like, hey, you know what? Sometimes life, it's different. It's not exactly what you think it is, but it just kind of, I don't want to say it just kind of works out, but is that a lesson that you're really kind of taking away when you look back?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I ever needed any personal evidence that there was something like divine guidance or something like that, yeah, don't take your own understanding of things too seriously. Do the best you can, but know that there is a broader picture that none of us can see at that point in time. We're making decisions. You just have to make the best decision you can. And then just stay in the game. It'll come together. Yeah.
Right. Don't take your understanding of things too seriously. I love that. That's why I love having these conversations, because I hear these things where, when you say it, it sounds so simple, right? Like, it just sounds so simple. But just saying it out loud is a whole other thing. Because I think, a lot of us do probably take life a little too seriously, or take things a little bit too seriously, when it's like, hey, we can lighten up a little bit, or, take a step back.
Yeah, just be a little bit more relaxed about it. Still do the hard work. I mean, but just don't fret about the consequences so much. Just do the best you can. Yeah. It gets simpler as you get older. When you look back at this age, things seem a lot simpler and clearer than they did when you were in the gray.
I'm experiencing a lot of that now, where I look back and I go, gosh, why was I so upset about this when I was 23 or 24 years old, or whatever that was. And now looking back, being like, oh, that was not a very serious thing. Like, it's just so interesting how that perspective changes, as you get older. You did kind of touch on this, so I'd love to follow up. So what does it mean being a Marquis Who's Who listie to you?
Initially, I wasn't even sure that I wanted to say yes, because it's never been, I've never liked focusing on myself. I've always focused outward. And I'm uncomfortable spending a lot of time. But I see now it's been a very, very important exercise in pulling my life together. Having this opportunity to look back, being forced, to think about what it was, what I've emerged to this point with, and I think I'm still learning and still growing. I would never have taken that opportunity. I now feel a lot more confident about myself and better about myself now that I see that all those silly things I did actually did make sense. Somehow, led to something. Yeah, it's been I'm very grateful that they called me and that I accepted and that I carried through, pulling these things together.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Bahr, thank you so much for taking the time, chatting with me today about your vision, your history, your work. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, thank you for being interested. Take care.
Awesome. Well, hey, if this conversation resonated with you, consider sharing the episode with someone who cares about the future of education, human rights, or the role of liberal arts and how it's shaping the way we think and engage with the world. If you'd like to explore more of Dr. Bahr's ideas and writings, you can visit her blog at iPubCloud International, where she shares reflections on current issues, culture, and the questions shaping our world today. If you'd like to hear more conversations with people who are shaping ideas, challenging assumptions, leading with purpose, visit the MarquisWho'sWho.com website, and of course, subscribe to the Marquis Masters podcast wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, share it with someone, leave a review so others can discover the show and keep enjoying conversations like this. Once again, thank you so much to my guest, Dr. Marie Bahr. I'm Nick Franck. We'll catch you for the next iteration of the Marquis Masters podcast.